Good morning, everyone. Now we are going to start our session. So I'll give you the introduction of the guest first. Then we can hand it over the session to him. Then he can continue with the session. So good morning, all. Our today's guest is SANYAM HAZARE. Now I'm going to give the introduction. SANYAM HAZARE is a senior product designer and an engineer with over 17 years of experience. He is the founder of the design firm Value of Void. He has a set UX design process that includes rapid prototyping workshops to understand the business problems and provides creative design solutions. He has worked with the 150 years old ACC, American Chemical Society, and the Fortune 50 Prudential PLC along with business from multiple industries across the US, Canada, Australia, Brazil, UK, Singapore, and UAE. Now his skills and endorsements. Top skills, digital identity, branding, interactive design, industry knowledge, brand development, font end development, website design, effective design solutions, creative design. Next, his experience, works experience. He has worked on TMC, Value of Void, CWTCH, India. Education. Now his education, he has studied DVP, sorry, DAV Public School, Kota, MIT, Pune. Come, let's us explore more with his guest appearance in our today's webinar on practical UX process guide. Be our audience today as he share his experience and effective tips and tricks of UX. So, sir, please, I request you can start the webinar. I'm sharing the screen to you. Thank you so much.
Hey, design and development company. We deal with clients from across the world. And today I want to talk about the practical UX process. Let me just share my screen. Give me a second. Okay, so let me know when you guys can see the screen. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, it is.
All right. Okay. So you can see the practical UX process, the yellow and purple, that screen. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So this session, we will be dividing the session into 4 different sections. One would be the first would be my story, how I became a designer, where it started, where I am right now, just in the hope of sharing my experiences with you guys and see if it is of any use, or if it is any inspiring for you guys. So that would be the first part. Second, and a very short part, would be a brief discussion about design. What is design? More of a philosophical, a deeper question, but in context of UI UX. Then the third one is the practical UX process. What is so practical about it? We'll talk about that. And then we'll take the last part as the questions. So if you guys have any questions, queries along the way, you can ask me at the end of it. All right. So I will start with my story first. Okay, so this is me when I was a little kid, and my story starts with me being the founder of Value at Void. We have worked with these companies across the globe. Snapchat is like the latest client that we have started working with. We have worked with the tech giants of Prudential, Bluehost, HostGator, TopTel, and a lot of other companies around the world. And what we do is we deal with digital product design. Now, digital product design is a little different than how other design disciplines work. but at the same time, it follows the same fundamentals. So we'll be talking about how if a client comes to you and says, I have this brilliant idea and I want to make this application, how would you take the first step to complete that process, to create that application? So we'll be talking about those in this. Let me start with my story first. So I come from a family of artists and designers. So a lot of my forefathers were national award winner artists, sculptors in India. You see these pictures here. These are actual artworks, and this is my great great grandfather here working on something. So I come from this family of artists where we kept talking about alignments and colors and culture around different things, experiences across different disciplines. So these magnificent palaces that you think of when you think of Rajasthan, my forefathers were involved in creating, building those little design elements and maintaining it at the same time. So I come from this background, and then when I was around in my sixth grade of school, I realized I wanted to take this into the digital realm, because that was the time when people started using Photoshop, and YouTube started coming into picture. There were tutorials, very very early phase of the internet, I would say. So I started doing a lot of Photoshop work, those ugly little things that you create when you put a sports car in the background and you're sitting in front of it. And I've done that kind of stuff at the very beginning. But starting from there, I think that kind of taught me how to use softwares. I got really comfortable with Photoshop. There was a video editing tool called Windows Movie Maker at that time. We made small little films from our digital cameras, those handy cams that we used to get earlier. So we did that kind of stuff, and it was all for fun initially. It was never for keeping in mind that one day I will grow and become a designer of some sort. It was never on those lines. So the journey started there. I even created logos for like 25 rupees for small little businesses around there. I grew up in a very small town in Rajasthan, and they had these little dhabas, and I created logos for them and things like that. So that's where it started. And then fast forward 4 years, I wanted to pursue art. I had a discussion with my father. I wanted to get into graphic design. At that time, there was no user experience, which is a boom these days. Nobody was talking about user experience, at least here in India. So I spoke to my father. I discussed a few things that I wanted to pursue this thing called graphic design. Like people talk about it, I want to pursue that. But my father was like, everybody in our family is an artist. Why do you want to go ahead and do the same thing? Why don't you learn something that is a little different? And what was it? It was science. Like go for engineering, go for some computer science application or some of these fields. So at that age, I was like, all right, let's try and pursue that. So I started with that. I prepared for entrance exams, and I finally got through MIT Pune, where I did my electronics and telecommunication engineering. So at that time, I really enjoyed a lot of digital image processing work, which was like extremely technical. And we did wave theories and microprocessors, microcontrollers. We worked on assembly level languages, things like that. I got interested in only a few subjects, not a lot of them. Though I scored well, I got through with good marks and stuff like that. But at the same time, I never left design. I had no idea when I was in my fourth year of college what I was doing with my life. I wasn't sure really. But by the time I graduated, I sat for my placements, my college placement exams, the placement drives, those competitive aptitude tests, and those other rounds that the companies took. I sat there with my design portfolio. I got into meditation, and I did a bunch of courses around Pune. Tried to learn how to calm my mind, because I feel in that stage, in that age, you're very volatile. You keep thinking about multiple things at once, and you don't really rest your brain, think about how you can take your life ahead. Doing all of that, all the meditation part of my life kind of gave me the clarity that I took the courage, sat with my design portfolio in an engineering college where they were hiring Java developers and iOS developers and whatnot. I sat with my portfolio and I said, listen, this is what I know. This is my work. This is what I'm interested in. My degree is talking about the technical side, but this design portfolio is what I am. This is the work that I have done. The first company that came to hire thought I was crazy and just thought this is absurd to even sit with a design portfolio. The second company, a company from Bombay, they actually hired me. They were looking for visual designers, but not in an engineering college. They hired me as a designer and a front-end developer, provided my knowledge in technology and design. So at that point, I really realized that my father was actually right. Instead of doing just one thing the whole time, I kind of have like two fields, knowledge of two industries at the same time, which, if you ask me, is like one of the most sought after talent in the industry right now. Designers design beautiful interfaces, but then the developers need to hold that kind of expertise to realize those applications. We'll talk about that a little later in this presentation. So after that, I entered the design industry, but the catch was the company who hired me was just paying me peanuts. It was paying me 8,000 bucks a month, which just did not make sense living in Bombay independently and doing your own thing. So I realized I was already in the industry. So what can I do now to grow in this industry? So I left the job in just like 1.5 months, and I got another job. I worked with Directi, like one of the really good companies in Bombay, and they have like this really big office, and we had butlers on the floor serving food and everything. It was fun experience living there, working there. So after that, I worked for some more companies, switched jobs throughout the 6 years of time, and I gained a lot of experience in design. What was the design that actually works? What is the actual way of working in the industry? So that was a very good part for me. We created this illustration. This guy here in the green T-shirt. This was my mentor when I was working for one of these companies. I met this guy, and he just broke the way I looked at design. I looked at design more from an aesthetic side of things, that making things look pretty. If things don't look good, I can do my magic and like make things look great, and it would work in the industry. But this guy actually taught me how design can make a difference, how you can do things like testing and research, and how you can create environments that can literally change lives. This person taught me all of those. He's an award-winning designer from Houston, Texas, and that's where he gets his experience from. Next comes is yeah. So after everything was going fine, I was working in good corporates, earning good money, doing great job for companies around the world. But as a full-time employee somewhere, I met with an accident. It was me, my mother, and my brother had a kid, so we went there to see him. On our way back, we had a really terrible accident. I saw my loved ones bleeding in my own arms, and I was very broken. I was broken to pieces, and I wasn't sure what I was doing in life. The trauma actually took 6 months to leave me, and it was a bad experience, but I would say it kind of changed my perspective. Because see, when something like this drastic happens in your life, you realize, you start questioning the way you were living. Like, I thought, if everything ended in that moment, what would I have done? So I realized the full-time job is just not working for me. So the changed life actually included me questioning the job. I was traveling in local trains for 4 hours a day, working for another 10, 12 hours, coming back home tired, didn't get time to do anything else in the whole day. And I just decided to leave my job. And my father is very service oriented, and he's been doing a service oriented job since quite some time. And I thought, when I'll tell him, he'll just say, no, you're stupid and you shouldn't really do this. But when I in that same local train, when I was thinking about this, I called him up immediately and I said, I want to leave my job. And to my surprise, he said, yes, do it. That's the way people are living these days. It's a world full of entrepreneurs. You should leave it right away and start with your journey. That was the moment when I left my job. I left Bombay. I moved to Delhi, where my parents were, and I stayed with them, saved up on rent, and I started cost cutting. I started hiring people with a very little budget, and I promised them someday the company will do good and I'll be paying them better. And then that's what happened. My company grew, and then we started doing great. So after this, I would say we started providing value, hired a lot of great designers from the University of Sydney, from Rhode Island School of Design, from NID in India. We've hired students from all of these universities, and a lot of self-taught designers like me. We just look at the portfolio, we look at the right attitude. If people have the right attitude, they're more than welcome to join our team. We run Value at Void now, a successful 100% remote. We have no offices, no headquarters, but we work across the world. We have 0 Indian clients because of the style of design that we have. We get most of our clients from the US, Australia, Berlin, and a lot of other English speaking countries. So I think that would be it for my story. Then we'll start with what is design. So design, but more in context of a UI UX world, more in context of the application design world, the IT world. So design is not making things pretty, right? So design is no longer just about making things look pretty. The core of design is to solve problems. Now, how do you solve problems? Sometimes one of those problems could be aesthetics. One application that might come to you, they might say our experience is more or less all right, but the look and feel is bad. And that's when we take aesthetics as an element that we need to fix, to solve. Sometimes it's low revenue, sometimes there is a high bounce rate, people jump off your application very frequently, things like that. Sometimes it's a more practical approach, it's a more practical problem that we need to solve, and that's the process that we follow to solve these problems. One more thing that we should keep in mind, that we are the leaders in today's IT world. Designers are sitting in the boardrooms of these high-tech companies like Spotify, Facebook, Airbnb, Dropbox. These are all design-centric companies, and designers are now sitting in the boardrooms, in the board of directors of these companies, because design is such an integral part of their process of what they build. Design should be included in the process from inception of the idea. So what does that mean? Let's say one person, one CEO of an upcoming startup comes to you and says, hey, I have a brilliant idea. I want the UI UX to be done. Now, a lot of times people get into development immediately. A CEO would directly get into development and say, we want to build that application. But what design can help you do is design can create that application without writing a single line of code. Now that saves a lot of money. It saves a lot of hassle. It saves a lot of guesswork. A lot of times designers have an idea, the CEO wants to hear it, but somehow we don't really we can't match those two, map those two together. So when you create these UI UX processes, when you create the output at every step, you're essentially helping them front load all the work, front load all the guesswork for them. Just give me a second. I have to put this on charge. I hope I'm not going too fast. Is that all right?
No, sir, it's absolutely right.
All right. Cool. So great design saves money and makes money. I think that's our mantra at Value at Void, the company that we run. We need to make sure that the business makes money. A business hires you to increase their revenues, essentially. Now, if the designs that you make is not generating revenue for them, then it's of no use. If it's not saving a lot of money for them, it's of no use. So great design always saves money and makes money. You have to look at design from a business standpoint all the time. Let me do this. Yeah. Okay. So now comes the practical UX process. Any questions till now about the story or what is design? Any queries, or should we move ahead to the actual process immediately?
Not yet, sir.
All right, cool. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments so I can take care of those. Okay. So the practical UX design process. Now, what is so practical about it, right? The design methods illustrated on the internet. So you would go on Skillshare or look at these YouTube videos explaining UX to you. A lot of them are actually just talking about theory, which to me did not really make sense. When I was learning, when I
sir,
was learning and when I was
collect my
studying.
case session also.
Could you please go on mute, please? All right. Yeah. So when I was studying UX, when I read about the process, the design thinking process, and all of it, it usually included a lot of budget, a lot of research, and things like that. And that's something that the startup world right now doesn't really want to do. And that's the practical side of it. The theory that you read about UI, UX, and the UX process, and the actual work that you do, it's very different. So, like I mentioned here, the methods illustrated on the internet never really fit perfectly in the real world scenario. So, a smaller company, let's say a startup in the US, they wouldn't spend $25,000 just for research, which is very important. A lot of enterprises do it, and that's the right way to do it. But still, a startup cannot afford to do that. So, what they do is they would call up and say, okay, we need an application, just create the screens. Now we can't really just go ahead and create the screen. We need to understand what the problem statement is. We need to understand the features that they need and the kind of flow that they require and things like that. So me and my company, the people we work together, we kind of took the design thinking approach, the UX design approach, and we tried to modify it in a way that it works for every client. So that's the whole practical side of it, because it's not just theory. You can actually utilize this in any mom and pop application that might come up in your way. So we kept iterating on those processes. So we did it for one client, we did it for another and another. For the last few years we are doing this. We are modifying our process every single time, and this is what I'll be showing you after this point. Okay, so Team VAV follows a concrete process to solve problems with design. And in my honest opinion, this is the only process you ever need to know to complete any UI UX project successfully. I hope there are people in the audience who are interested in UI UX. This is more concentrated on UI UX, but you can apply these fundamentals in any of your process or the projects that you would be encountering in future. Let me start with the first part. So brainstorm. This is where we start. This is the first step, brainstorming. A lot of times these books that teach you UX would say you need to have a questionnaire, you need to ask them questions about things like 5 adjectives around your brand and what is your story like and things like that. So they suggest you give them a questionnaire. You ask the CEO of a company or like a decision maker of the company to fill a long ass form for them. And now that doesn't really make sense. It's not very practical. So what we do is we start with these brainstormings. We start with conversations. We just get on calls with these decision makers, usually the CEO, CTO, CMO of these companies. And we find some time, even if it's like 20, 30 minutes a day, we find some time, we talk to these people, and we try to explain this process to them of what we are doing. We start a conversation. So, hey, where did you start your company? Everyone loves to talk about their company, right? So we start with that. We try to strike a conversation. We try to get the information that we need, but in a more usual way, right? In a more normal way, rather than saying fill this form and get back to me in 2 days or or a week or something. So starting that brainstorming, that conversational approach, we have a few ways that we have set in the past few years. Like these are the questions that we need to start with, and we try to slide it in the conversation, and we keep writing down everything that they mention. So that's the brainstorming bit. After that is the feature list. So when we are talking to them, we keep writing down the feature list. Now feature list, consider this as Aladdin's lamp, right? We go in front of them and we say, okay, what is it that your application should do? If in an ideal world, if everything goes right, what is it that your application should do, and what would you consider as success for your application? If somebody comes up and says, hey, I want to solve world poverty with application, then that feature list needs to have features that actually does that, right? So the key performance indicators of your applications, we write those down. So the key features that you need, we just write down everything. Obviously, when we write down everything, half of the times it's good stuff, half of the times it's bad stuff. So as you can see on the screen, you have yellow sticky notes, red sticky notes, green and blue sticky notes. That's the approach that we also follow. The features that makes more sense to us, we put a green dot right next to it. We say this is an important feature, we want to do this in this phase. And the features that don't make much sense, we put it as a red dot. So we say this is not important, this is not important for this phase, we'll pick it up later or something like that. And obviously the yellow ones are like more medium priority feature list. Now writing this feature list is very important, because now we are not restraining, or now we are not confining our discussions with respect to the application. We are not telling the client, don't give me this feature, just give me the good ones. It's not possible, right? When you start thinking about things, when you start thinking out loud, when you become creative with this, you start thinking about everything under the sun, right? If let's say there is an application that we are building to for a coupon code system for some games on PS4 or something like that, right? So that coupon code system, what all should it include? We'll start just writing down everything that we can think of. We will not think this is a bad idea. There are no bad ideas in this phase, right? This is the part where you just put down everything on a sheet of paper, or in the form of a digital document, or however you like, on a whiteboard, things like that, right? So we write down every single thing that we can. And once that is done, we start prioritizing this. So prioritizing a feature list is one of the important parts. Thinking this is what we collected in the past 10 days. Now, out of those 10 days, what are the best features that we think should we take up in the first go? Now, again, just think about this. We are not doing a formal process. We are just having conversations. We are just looking at things, a few rules. So we have a more organized discussion rather than just having a mayhem while discussing these things. So after a feature list, once we know what the application requires, once we have that long list of the features that are required for the application, we start drafting the user journeys, the user personas at the same time. So if I have, let's say, 20 features, for those 20 features, what are the different types of users that I can think of? So if there are 20 features, I would say, okay, there are 4 types of users who would be utilizing these 20 features. So those 4 types of users are called user personas. Once we have those personas help you imagine things. Uh, People think UX is not a very creative job. People think UX is more of studying and research and these things. It doesn't have to be. It is as creative as painting a canvas. You have to imagine things. You have to put things on your medium, on a piece of paper, on a canvas, or wherever you are, or whatever you're using. If I say, imagine a 24-year-old kid who's a 24-year-old professional, maybe, who plays PS4, like taking the previous example ahead, what would his day look like, right? A day in the life of a 24-year-old male, and what would he like to do? How does he start his day? How does he end his day? And then you have to imagine, in that day, in that life in a day of this guy, when would he utilize your application? And that's the part that you need to imagine. You have to think about what would he be doing once he enters the application. What would he be doing when he does the primary task that he's supposed to do, and how he exits the application. Once you imagine the whole thing, it tells you a lot about this upcoming application, this new application that you're designing. You'll be surprised how many people can't do this, how a lot of these founders and CEOs and CTOs of the company just fail to do that. And they need you, the creatives, to think about this process, to think about how you can craft a great experience. We are not just making an application to just put it out there and somehow magically people will download it. We have to create great experiences in order to increase the downloads, to sell that application or to sell a specific service. So the experience side is what matters ultimately. And for that, you do this process. So once you're done with the user journeys, you also think about how that person feels. Now, talking about experience and taking it ahead, the user enters your application and exits the application. And this is where he spends all of the time on your application. Now, in this journey, how does he feel? So if you're using an application and the application hangs or lags or throws you an error, if it throws you an error, you feel bad, right? And if you get something for free, you get excited, or you if your job gets done very easily, you see a very funny video or something, you get excited. So we map the emotions as well. We map how a user feels at the beginning of this application, how they travel through the application, and how they exit. So understanding how they feel at every step helps us take better decisions as a business. So things like, if you get a lot of errors, right, I can program my application in such a way that if you get 4 errors, I give you a 20% off. So if I give you 4 errors, if my application gives you 4 errors, then you must be pissed. You must be feeling bad about it. What if I give you something at that little instance that you will feel good about yourself, right? For a company, 10, 20% of discounts doesn't really hurt a lot. But at the same time, for a user, they feel really great once they get these rewards throughout the process. So that's where these user journeys and um, user personas actually help, right? So that was a part about user journeys. Now, right after this is wireframes, and in our team, we call it the ugliest part of the design process. Why is it the ugliest part? If you have ever built an application, people would ask you to create the final version that looks good, right? People would ask you to show them something that works, and they don't want to spend time in research and analysis and all of those. So when we take a wireframes, we don't pay attention to look and feel at all. We are only focusing on structure and flow. What goes where on the application? The logo should go here, the header should go here, these should be the links, there should be a big slider at the beginning giving you the discounts and offers and whatnot, and then at the bottom you will see XYZ things at different sections around the page. We just roughly draft those. If you see in this screen, in this image, how these wireframes are done, these are very low fidelity. How does this help? How is this ugly part actually helps build the application? It saves time. Usually to create a screen, it takes around 1.5 day to create one screen. Now, if I have 100 screens, imagine how much time it takes. So to avoid all of that, what we do is we do these rough sketches. We get on calls with the client, and we show them what we have built, get their approval, iterate these screens. Now imagine if I have 100 screens and I have to modify all the 100 screen. If they give one change, I have to replicate it 100 times. For a high fidelity UI mockup, something that is very detailed, you have every pixel in the right place, you have the right color, you have the right font, you have the right composition, the right layout, everything is in place. Now if somebody says change this, it just breaks the flow and it takes forever to edit and modify things. So to avoid all of that process, we start with this ugly part. We start with these rough wireframes. We keep talking to the client on and off, and we keep including them in our process. Now that is very important. The more you include people in your process, the happier they are at the end. So if I include the CEO of the company, the business analyst, the project owner, the product owner, the project manager, all the development team, all the designers, everybody in the process, if I share these wireframes and ask for that input, and share it on a Zoom call, share my screen and say, this is what we have built, this is how we plan to do things, it helps a lot, right? It helps getting everybody on the same page. Sometimes we are in a team of 200 people. There are 200 people, like in the case of ACS, American Chemical Society. We work with teams that are as big as 200 people. Now, how do you get everyone on the same page with these wireframes? If I say, imagine a pink flower, uh, it might get difficult for everyone to imagine the same thing. Everyone would imagine their own version of a pink flower. But what we do is we draft this rough version, and we craft something and show them this is what we feel it should be. And now all 200 on the same call can see, okay, this is what he was looking at. If we are placing a call to action, and if we say we'll put an orange call to action, we draw that orange call to action and put some text on top of it and say, this is what we are looking at, this is what we are imagining. And now everybody is on the same page. There are less conflicts in the team, there are less problems in the team, people understand things very clearly, they understand the flow, and making changes becomes easy because these are rough. We don't pay attention to every little minor detail here. So that's why wireframes help a lot. While doing wireframes, it's very important to let the client know, or to let the customer know, that we are not focusing on look and feel at all, and they will still do it. They will still look at your aesthetics and say, oh, I'm not thinking about the colors, but I don't like this, I don't like that. So at that point, you have to communicate it to them that this is a wireframing state, and look and feel is none of our concern at this point. Look and feel will be the next step. Right now we'll focus on the flow and structure of the application. Creating these wireframes rapidly is very important. If you pay a lot of attention to your wireframes, a lot of details to your wireframes, and keep doing it forever, then you defeat the purpose of creating wireframes. So creating quick wireframes, dirty, ugly wireframes is fine, as long as the flow makes more sense. We do multiple iterations. We send these wireframes to the client. They suggest changes. We update those in a day, send it back again. This keeps happening sometimes for 2 3 months, more than that. And once they are happy with the flow, once they are satisfied, they are content with the final thing that we built, only then we actually push it to the next stage, which is the look and feel. So once we get the approval, we create these hi-fi mockups. Now, these hi-fi mockups are the final good-looking part of your screen, of your application. So how do we do that? We start with mood boards or stylescapes. So essentially, going on these platforms like Dribble, Behance, and a bunch of other websites. You have a plugin by Muesli, and a couple of others. We go on these applications, we get a bunch of screenshots, get a bunch of images from different designers around the world, and we create mood boards, we create these stylescapes and show it to the client. Now, mind it, we haven't really designed anything yet. This is somebody else's work, and we are not really copying anything from anyone, but we create a bulk of these images to get a sense of their visual vision around their brand, right? What is it that they want for their visual treatment of the application? Are they looking for a light mode, dark mode, very high contrast application, low contrast application, something that has pastel colors, something that has a lot of different colors, something that's all the shades of blue and green and things like that. So getting a hint of that, how crazy can we go when we are designing the visuals? These mood boards and stylescapes really help in that. So we try to create multiple mood boards of different styles, and we show it to the client, and the client can just pick and choose and say, I don't feel very great about the first option, but the next two options make sense, and things around that. Again, conversation is the key. We sit with the client, we stay on the Zoom calls, we never just send files and say, just look at it on your own, get back when you have time. No, that never happens. You have to get into a conversation, you have to understand what they need, you have to measure, analyze things on the call, make suggestions on the call. Or you don't like this, how about we tweak it in a certain way, and keep doing things on the call itself. We draw a lot on screen. We have these graphic tablets and iPads and things like that. We draw on screen, we create rough sketches right there. So if they want to modify things, we get approval right there. So these conversations actually guide you through the process. Now, once the mood boards, the stylescapes are ready, once we have finalized like a visual style of it, we take the wireframes that we did in the previous step, we take the visuals, and we treat the wireframes with the visuals. Now, look and feel, fonts, text, everything the way we liked from the mood board stylescapes, we start applying those on the first couple of screens. Again, include the client in this process, get approval from the client at this process. Once they say yes, the first screen looks good, it makes sense, it looks the way we want it to be, then we replicate it 100 times. Now, notice how we did not create the UI mockup for all the 100 screens once. We just did it once, got approval, and then replicated it many times. Now, at this stage, the client cannot say, I want to make modifications. We have frozen the wireframes, we have frozen the structure. Now, any changes that they offer or they want to add after this point should be done in the next phase. So we divide a big goal into smaller chunks and say you want the best looking application, the best functioning application in the world. It'll take phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four. We take phase one, we start working on phase one. Now, this is very beneficial for any creative, I feel, because it reduces the number of changes and iterations and revisions that you offer to the client. So we take one scope, we work on that, and once that scope gets fulfilled, we work on the second scope, the second phase, and the third phase, and fourth phase. So coming back to this, these high fidelity screens that we created, we take it a step ahead. Instead of leaving these as the good looking screens and everything, we create UI mockups in the sense of a prototype. So we create interactive prototypes essentially. So you have one screen, you click on the button, it goes to this screen, you click on another button, it goes to another screen. So creating these prototypes help a lot. We created our own version. We have our own process of creating these prototypes as well. Once those prototypes are done, we create a link and share it with the client, and the client can walk through these prototypes step by step and get the experience of the final application. Now imagine without spending a single dollar on development, which takes the most amount of money, right? Uh, Without spending anything there, you have an application that looks really good, right? It looks like the final application. It looks very real, and you can experience it firsthand. Uh, so that is super powerful these days in the real design world. Making such a thing without writing a single line of code is very powerful. A lot of companies, what they do is they create these interactive prototypes, and then they go out to get funding. So when they are going for their seed funding, their round A, round B, they actually take a working prototype rather than just talking in air saying my app will do this, this, this. They actually present the working prototype, click through the prototype, and show how things work. And that is again super powerful in today's world where every nook and corner has a startup and everybody wants to do certain things. Creating these prototypes are super helpful. Once those interactive prototypes are done, we again get approval, and there are some minor changes here and there. We get changes. We keep doing those. We iterate the UI mockups, we iterate the prototype, and finally it is handed over to the developer. Or in our case, we do the front end code as well. So after all the multiple iterations, we write the code in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and we finally build that application into a real world, real usable application. So we like to tell our clients that our applications don't just look good in the design software, they actually get realized, they actually get fabricated into the real world. So that is another edge for my company and the work that we do for our clients. Which brings us to the end of this presentation. And if you guys have any questions, I would love to cater to those.
Hello, guys. You can hear me? Hello, anybody can
Yes,
on the
ma'am.
mic?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that was a great session, sir. Thank you so much. So, guys, we are open here for open the doors for any questions you have. You can ask sir directly, one by one. You can on your mic, or you can chat, or you can chat this type chat in the chat box, so we can start. Feel free. Come on.
All right, I'm getting questions in the chat here. Does the CEO check the prototype application, or he has people working under him to check? You'd be surprised. A lot of CEOs are involved in this process, are involved at the very beginning. Prototype is at a very end state. They are involved at the very beginning. They want to be included in the process because it's their vision, right? It's their company that they are forming. They want to know what all things they can contribute to and make their application great and be successful at the end. So yes, the CEO checks the prototype, and not just the prototype, but also the wireframes and the initial discussions, and wants to be a part of it. I haven't met a single CEO who does not want to be included in the process. If you have a bigger enterprise, if you have a bigger client, like we work with Prudential Life Insurance, I obviously never spoke to the CEO because it's a company with 20,000 employees across the world or something like that. So obviously there it's not possible, but then they have these decision makers. Ultimately, it's the decision maker who takes the call. whoever it is. It can be a project manager, it can be a head of a certain division or vertical in their company, head of digital transformations, right? With ACS, we have spoken to the digital transformation head. They sit with us and they discuss things. Again, that's also a big enterprise. So whoever is the decision maker, he sits with you and he discusses things. That's the general trend in the market right now. I hope that made sense. Then the next one is, what exactly are prototypes? So prototypes are essentially screens that you can click through. So if I create a UI mockup, I show you this is how an application is going to look like. Now, those are just static screens. You can't click around to move to the next step. But if I just send you a JPEG, right, it's JPG image, that's not dynamic. But if I give you the power to click on a button and move to the next step, right, without writing code, those are called prototypes, right? Something that gives you an idea about the application, the final application, without really creating an application, if that makes sense. All right. How do you calculate UX score on a working application? So we do our UX audits. We start with a few of these heuristic evaluations, and we try to understand how obvious is a certain feature, and we try to audit an application from the very first screen, a login screen, till the end. We don't follow a formal process for giving it a number. We do more of a qualitative and a quantitative check. We do moderated, unmoderated interviews. We use applications like Maze. Maze can give you a score if you're into that. You can use usertesting.com. They have a similar application. So that's how it gets calculated. But we focus more on the audit. We focus more on the problem statement there. Okay. Does the beginners without any experience get hired at your company? Yeah. Like I said at the beginning of the call, we are looking for people with the right attitude. If you have the right attitude to learn, we will definitely take you in. If you have, a little bit of experience in art, design, things that hold or touch base with any of the verticals in the creative world, we really don't mind hiring people. A lot of people who have joined the organization started off by with just when they graduated, right? But we saw the right attitude. We saw when somebody wants to learn, because hey, come on, I had that, right? I had that hunger to learn. So I'm just looking for that. If I see people who really want to learn, I definitely figure out a way for that to work. All right. Uh, what is the future of UX in next 5 years? If anyone wants to become UX designer, how should he, she prepare? Oh, that's a great question. What is the future of experience, right? I don't think it will ever get irrelevant. So you have these trends that are going on in the market, right? Neo materialism. You have those glass effect that Apple uses, and you have those skeuomorphic designs that Apple created in iOS 4, iOS 5, right? They thought it was a trend, but it vanished after a point. That is not UX. That is a certain style trend. The style trend might end in a few days, in a few years, in a few decades, but a good experience will never go out of fashion. You will never stop liking things, or you will never stop enjoying good things in the world, right? So in my opinion, UX should never end. The best UX, and we keep talking about this in our company, the best UI, the best UX in the world is no UI and no UX. If I can just think of buying shoes from Amazon and I get it in the next 5 minutes on my door, that's the best experience. So the way to do it will change, technology will evolve, things will change in the world, but I don't think UX will ever go out of fashion. If you have the critical ability, critical analysis ability, I don't think it'll ever go out of business. In fact, people have just become aware of it. 1990s was the first time Don Norman actually coined the term user experience when he was looking at doors, and he thought, why do you have push and pull written on the doors, and it's still confusing, and those are called Norman doors. You guys should read up on it. But that's when user experience came into the world, and it's not going anywhere, in my opinion, in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, maybe. and I hope it doesn't. My livelihood depends on it. All right. Uh, in which format to export UI design created in XD? Can this image be used as UI in app development? XD offers you a very great tool, great way to share these prototypes. So in XD, if you see, like I'll show you this presentation that you just saw, this was all built on XD. So let me show you how this file looks like. So this is the exact presentation, right? We work on XD Cloud. So me and one of my teammate, we built this last night. Just we had an hour, so we got things together. We created this. Now we created prototype out of it. I think it will be a great example because you guys witnessed the prototype. So asking what a prototype is, the presentation that I just showed you, that is how a prototype looks like. So we link these screens to each other. How you click on one screen and it goes to the next screen. We created a flow out of it. This is the home flow out of it. And once you're sharing it, it's always a good idea to share it in the desired way. So I can send it out as a design review, which will allow people to drop comments on it. I can send it out as a development link. Now, development link is where it'll give the developer every little detail that they want. So for example, if we go to a specific screen, um, you have a certain font size and font weight and font color and everything, right? So it's Rupert font, 81 font size, 163 line height, kerning, tracking, everything, right? And the color is here and things like that, right? So if I send it out as a development link, the developer will get this entire interface obviously on a browser, and he would get to see the color shades, the images to download, everything on that link. So instead of sending it out as a JPEG of the full screen, which is pretty useless for anyone, we send out these development links where they can see the application if they want, but they can also interact with the application. They can go to the next pages, they can click around, they can download the fonts if required, they can download images, get the color, font, everything that is required for development. I hope this answered the prototype question as well. Like what you're looking at here is a prototype. I can go back here, I can go to home and continue with this. So I'm just clicking and moving ahead. That's what a prototype essentially does. Okay. For creating any different designs company, there is any application name or website. I don't get that, Jobin. Could you repeat that? For creating any different design company, there is any application name or website name? No. Could you please retype that? I need to understand the question better. Then we have created the application. It's in use. How often will you update the UI design to match the trend? Does the client approach you for update, or is it included in your contract? The applications need to be updated every now and then. It could be a weekly update, it could be a monthly update, it could be a bi-yearly update or things like that. But ideally, there would be no application or no website or no web app that just is made once and is thrown out in the market, because the world is changing, the IT world is changing, the scenario, the way people perceive technology, the way people perceive UI UX is changing every day. And it should never be a static one. That's why we have dynamic websites. There are things that the company can change by itself. There are things that you can hire a marketing executive and they would make modifications, create new pages and things like that within the application, within the website. So yes, it has to change. There is no question about it. Do we get such kind of work? All the time. We work on a retainer basis, so we get paid every month, and we don't charge them a specific a specific fixed fee. We give them an idea. So if we get a project, we say, my team will take 2 weeks or 2 months to complete the project. We don't stick to I'll charge you $2,000 and I will give you 2 iterations, 3 iterations. It just never works. The client is never satisfied, because once you do the two rounds of changes, they would be like, but this is not what I needed. So when we do the retainer version, it helps us better, because then we do everything that they say. We have our expertise and we guide them to how these things should change and things like that. But we never say no to changes. Design is all about iterations to me. You make something, it looks shit, you keep working on it, you keep modifying it till the point it looks good, right? So I think that iteration process should never be taken away from design, and for that reason we don't go fixed price, and we do have these updates and changes and everything. Sometimes the client stays with us for 2-3 years as well. So yeah. Okay. What is a good practice exercise for fresher UX designer? Uh, that's a great question. I think developing your critical ability to understand how something works or not. In short, I would say what is good user experience and what is bad user experience. Working on that is the most important part. We in the design world we call it the eye. So you need to develop the eye. You need to look at a lot of screens. Go on Dribble, Behance, Musely, and all of these applications. See what good application, what good user experience looks like, feels like. Look around, look at the application that you use on a daily basis, and think about what do you like about it and what you don't like about it. A lot of times aesthetics also fall under user experience, right? When you use an application and if it looks beautiful, your experience increases, right? That's why UX and UI goes hand in hand. It's never just UX and it's never just UI. It always goes hand in hand. What you see is half of the experience, right? So starting with understanding what is a good UX, what is a good UI, that is very important. And number two would be, starting with typography. A lot of, I mean, it might come as a surprise, but understanding typography, understanding how text flows in an application. Any application that you see, right, it has text in it. You would rarely see an application that has no text in it, and every piece of text needs to be formatted in a proper way. It needs to have a header, it needs to have a subheader, a paragraph. That kind of hierarchy, you would be surprised how many designers fail at doing that. Typography is, to me, is one of the most important thing. The line height, the gap between every line is so crucial for any application. If it's too much, then people think it's too hard to read. If it's too less, people think it's a block and we don't want to read it. So it has to be very apt. So I would say typography and developing an eye would be a very uh, strong start for these. And obviously there are courses that you can sign up for and things like that. So yeah. Jobin, do you mind repeating your question?
So for creating jobs, we have to create different business names, no? Like,
What do you mean creating jobs exactly? Like if you have your own company, if you want to build your own company and you need a name for that, is that what you're referring to?
for creating business names, like I was talking about that.
So there are companies in the world who would charge you $1 million to just name your brand.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Creating a name to your company, I don't think an application can do it. An application can guide you to do it. I never use such services, to be honest. I feel they are not there yet. And plus, also think about this. Why do you create a name for a business? You create a name for a business. You create a logo, a brand identity to become unique, right? You want to stand out from the market. Now if you're using an auto generator of some sort, a website that gives you names and things like that, it'll give the same name to a million people around the world, and you will be just one of those 1 million people, and you'll never stand out. Thinking from a creative aspect of things would help you do it. Like my company is called Value at Void, right? I started thinking about what I should name my company. In my eighth grade, I named my company Sammy's Design Studio because people could not say Sanyam properly. They could not say my name properly. And my friends started calling me Sammy. So I started calling it Sammy's Design Studio. But it was the time when apostrophe Z was in trend. And after a few years, I realized it looked very bad. So then I thought, okay, I faced a bad name. I kept a bad name for my company. It was a bad phase of my life. But what should I do now? And I started thinking of values, right? I started thinking about how if you hire me, I'm going to provide value to you. And that value will in turn become revenue for you, will become profit for you. So I'm providing values essentially. So I started thinking about revenue, value, and the benefits that I provide. And I wanted to include it in the name. Then I came across this philosophy in my, I think, 12th grade or something of negative space and what negative space means. And there's a Chinese philosopher called Lao Tzu. You should read up on him. He spoke about how empty space is very important. So if you have a wheel of a wagon, there's an empty space in the center where the wheel spins. This room you're sitting in has an empty space within where you can sit. If I fill this room with bricks, it will not be a room, it will just be a block of bricks, right? So that's when
Okay.
I started thinking how important value is at the void part of it, at the empty side of it. What is the value that you get, right? If you fill a glass with the same material, you can't drink water from it. So it is important to have that negative space, to have that empty space within. And that's when I thought value at void. And then I used the English tool, the literature tool of alliteration of the ver sound at the two words. So it's easier to remember value, void, things like that. So there are tools that you can use. There are some language tools that you can use. There's some visual tools that you can use to name a company. And in my opinion, it's not a small process. Like I said, people charge $1 million to name your brand. Photoshop was named after giving them $1 million. Photoshop Elements, I guess. So it takes time. It evolves over time. So choose one thing and keep modifying it as you grow. Your name is just there to give you an identity. That's about it. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, students, hope you have all asked these questions. Sir, thank you so much for communicating with students and answering their questions. Sir, I have one question for you from a CG Academy. If our students wants to do internship or apply in your company, what will be the criteria and the quality work that you are needed?
If there is any UI related work or digital related work that you have done, that would be a good starting point. If not, at least some basics around the softwares, at least knowing the in and outs of Photoshop, Illustrator, Experience Design, just using the software. If you have those kind of skills, that should also work. But like I said, we try to look for a good attitude. If you have a great learning attitude, if you can work, essentially, if you have that right attitude, um, we would be more than happy to take you in there.
Okay, sir. Yeah, thank you so much, sir. That is a great session. So students, we will end up with this session by giving a thank you note to sir. Thank you, sir, for this wonderful and informative session. That was really a helpful session and knowledge and experience that you have shared. I hope will students will get a good future journey by attending this session of UIX design. Thank you so much, sir. Have a great
Thank
day.
you. And this was a great experience. Thank you, guys. We also run a YouTube channel. If you guys are into it, you can subscribe to the channel and write any comments. If you have any doubts, I keep sharing small videos there. So that helps people learn a lot of things in their creative journey. And
Sure.
if you have any questions, let me know on my LinkedIn. We are very active on LinkedIn, you'd see. So just let me know and we'd love to help you out. And all the best for your future endeavor, guys. I hope you make it big. Thank you.